So let's get to Evernote.
Okay.
I previously was a user of Evernote. I loved it. And I'm using a past tense, so you can probably see where I'm going. I loved it. All my friends loved it. I was just talking to one of my friends and told him I'm going to be interviewing you. And he was like, oh, what happened to Evernote? So we clearly kind of moved. We were part of that cohort that moved on to other tools. Mm-hmm. And, we were talking about this earlier, how there was sort of a period where product development kind of paused for Evernote. There was a replatforming going on. And what I wanted to hear about you is, the replatforming was going on and you joined as, the VP of marketing. I imagine that had some challenges for the go-to-market and then the story you were telling publicly. Curious, when you jumped in, like, how did you think about that whole situation? I've never done a turnaround before. So, what's the first order? What's the order of operations for all that? How did you go about that?
Well, I don't actually, in the way that you've asked the question, I don't think that I can take credit for very much. So when I actually joined Evernote, we were under different leadership. The last CEO prior to Ian Small. And my job was to help, well, basically I got hired to run marketing, all of the demand gen, the go-to-markets, a lot of acquisition around that, because they were on a path to go and support teams and collaboration. And they were looking for small businesses, probably 500 and fewer, that could use Evernote within an organization. And there was really good data to back up this strategy. And that was that, 85% of the people who paid for Evernote were using it at work already. And we had such a large fan base, people were crazy about it. And somebody like me, who might have a small team of 30 people, could come in and say to a company where, your IT is an organization, but maybe you don't have as many controls or rules about what type of software you can use. And I could just go over to my IT manager and say, hey, I'd like to use Evernote. I'd like to use it for my team. Can you go get this set up for me? And that would just happen, right? About a year in, there was a pretty big shakeup. There was press around, sort of what was going on. And Ian Small was brought in by the board, and he is really remarkable. And I think he's responsible for the trajectory that we're on now. And that is primarily because he came in and he really did a lot of listening. And what he heard was this pent-up need, right? Yes, there are teams that absolutely need Evernote, but there are still, millions upon millions of individuals like yourself who are using it and just haven't seen innovation come out of it. And it's beyond this note-taking original function. And people were really using it for knowledge management. And then they were finding workarounds to really get into personal productivity. And the tool wasn't necessarily helping them deliberately with things that would help them with productivity. They were developing their own workflows. They were developing their own systems. And that all came back to our technical debt. It just hadn't kept pace, right? Every company, every SaaS company needs to continually figure out how they're going to readapt their technology and make sure that it's staying current so that they can release things quickly and of quality. And that was the path that Ian said. Absolutely, teams are important. Absolutely, our individual users are important. But first, we need to take a pause. We need to re-platform this so that we can build things that you want and do it quickly and do it with quality.
Yeah, that's really interesting to hear. So then, I guess from your standpoint, as the re-platforming was happening, and there wasn't much new innovation maybe on the front end of things that people could actually see. How did you go about kind of telling the story of how Evernote was evolving publicly? Mm-hmm. I think you had mentioned previously a behind the scenes series.
Yeah, I mean, for a marketer, for a product marketing team, right? Even for a comms team, like having a period of a year and a half where the only releases going out are really ones to fix bugs and not really drive innovation. How do you connect? How do you stay connected with your customers and how do you bring them along? And actually, Ian got an email from one of our Evernote customers, and he said, hey, you remember Lord of the Rings? They did this fantastic behind the scenes series, and it was so fun to watch. You guys should consider that for Evernote. And so Ian and I got together and we said, why wouldn't we do this? That's actually a really cool idea. Let's try it. And I remember...
That's amazing.
Yeah, right? I mean, it goes to a persistent, you can see the same theme, which is we're always listening. We're always listening to our customers.
Yeah.
Because as a product marketer and as a CEO, that's the best thing that you can do, right? Is really put them front and center. I remember the very first one, Ian basically just got on screen and for maybe a minute talked about why he was going to do this, what it was going to be, et cetera. And we had a disgruntled set of customers at the time, right? They like you said, there hadn't been a lot of innovation. They weren't seeing, for individuals, they hadn't been seeing a lot of changes that they wanted and what have you. And I remember one of the first comments was something like, oh, he looks like a mid-level manager at Costco or something like that.
Oh, man.
I thought, oh, rude, But in fact, we consistently put out these videos. We let people know. We showed them mock-ups that were still on printed pages. They weren't even demos, right? They hadn't been built into the app. We took them along from both infrastructure and what we were doing underneath the hood, and also showing them some of the UI and how we were rebuilding things. And very, very quickly, all of that sentiment changed, right?
Yeah.
I'd like you to do when you're sitting on an airplane and it's delayed and you just want to know what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
And if the pilot doesn't say anything, you get angrier and angrier. And then if the pilot comes on and she says, hey, sorry, we're delayed. We're fixing the door. You're like, oh, good. Yeah, just do that. Keep doing that.
Please do that. That is a great analogy. I'm going to start using that moving forward. Just communication is everything. Even if it's not good news, some news to keep folks updated is great.
Yeah.
And it's another situation where just serendipity is what resulted in a great idea there. Just some random customer emailing you about a Lord of the Rings behind the scenes series. I love it.
But I think you would find that probably happens more often than we realize. And it's really about listening, right?
Mm-hmm. Not writing it off.
Right. Not writing it off. Not just sort of ignoring everything that comes into your personal LinkedIn account or what have you.
Yeah. And so tell us about this repackaging effort that you and your team drove. I imagine with that came a lot of pricing and packaging changes and lots of new fun announcements.
Once we had launched the new apps and, get them all out, get everybody propagated on them, the next thing that we were doing was the innovation, right? We very quickly followed with the home redesign and the widgets. We introduced tasks into beta, and we had other things under the hood that we weren't talking about publicly, right? But that were coming. And repackaging was actually a multi-year effort. When I joined back in 2018, there was a lot of, like company-wide gospel, right? Or dogma even. We were, I think you could say we were the original PLG company, right? Because of our
100%.
Huge growth off of that. But nobody inside Evernote talked about money. They never talked about converting people. It was really this fundamental idea that, people just need lots of features, and then they start using those features. And if they use those features, then they're going to pay us out of the goodness of their heart, I guess. And so that didn't really sit well with me as a product marketing lead. And the other piece of dogma was that people used Evernote, and this is absolutely true and self-reported in survey after survey, for both work and home, right? But we had one single paid product, Evernote Premium. And, I was sort of thinking, but if you use it at work, there's an urgency, right? You have deadlines, you have a boss, you have quarterly reviews, you have meetings after meetings after meetings. And as a parent, I have a family at home, I am much more likely to just get by, right? Like, oh yeah, that's right. Do I really need an app to track my kids' doctor's appointments or the school meetings? Yeah, maybe not. I'm doing okay as it is. And so we really felt that there was a differentiation we could create between an individual user using Evernote for a home scenario and an individual user who really wants to use Evernote at work. And probably our roadmap would support differentiated features. And so when you undertake something like pricing and repackaging, right, the first thing you need to know is like, what are you going to do? Like, how our customer is going to react? What are the things that they really need? And so we started with so much audience work, right? The research, we did it at qualitative studies, right? Where we interviewed hundreds of people in different countries, whether they're our existing customers, maybe they used to use Evernote, maybe they've never even heard of Evernote, right? We did user testing of mock-ups based on what we had heard and what we knew was on the roadmap. We then developed this massive quantitative survey that we sent out to all sorts of different target segments and brought it back and really took a look, and we're able to say, we believe that there is differentiation through features within our product line. And this was going to be really important because our free product is so robust. You can
very generous,
right? You can be on Evernote for years and never find a need to pay us.
Yeah, I was on Evernote for years, and I only started paying because it limited the number of devices I could sync.
Right.
And
That's
at that
right.
point,
that was the start of our
my brain was there, yeah, and I had to pay.
That's right. So why would that be the only thing? Like, we used to say the biggest competitor to Evernote Premium is Evernote Free, because right. And so we found a way, right? We found a way to redo all of the messaging so that we could be very, very clear, so that when you come to Evernote and you wonder, well, should Evernote Personal be my fit? Should Evernote Professional be my fit? Do I need Evernote Free? It's clear now. There are differentiations between the products, and you can see what you're getting, and you can see why we've built it that way. And we're going to continue to build these out, right? I think the other thing that we did once this worked out and we really saw the ability for us to do this and sort of had modeled what the impact would be to our bottom line, we made the transition for our existing users really wonderful. Okay. And by this, I mean, tons of over communication, right? We absolutely had pre-coms. We were explaining exactly what was happening for you specifically and the type of customer you were for Evernote. We had public help and learning articles so you could see what was happening. We weren't necessarily telling you exactly what was going to be in the new plans or what the names in the new plans were, but we were clear enough that you could know what was going to happen come launch day. And then the way we planned it is, anyone who was paying us full price for premium, right? We simply automatically converted them to the commensurate tier, which meant for no extra cost, they got a whole suite of brand new functionality, right? They didn't have to do anything. Wow. So what they've been waiting for years and years, right? All this innovation and everything else, they just downloaded the new app, kept paying the same amount, and suddenly they had tasks, right? They had a calendar integration. They had like multiple widgets on their home dashboard, including the filtered notes widget and all of these really neat things, right? The people who were paying us what we'll call legacy pricing. So we had different price increases of some of our legacy plans over the years. We just let them be. If they felt that they were paying a fair price for the set of functionality that they were getting for that price, we did not see a need to force them into a higher price tier. We made it easy for them to upgrade should they want that, but we didn't force them into it at all. And then thirdly, we took nothing away from free customers.
I love that approach to making it as easy as possible for them. I've gotten emails about other software changing their pricing, and hey, you're going to be losing access to XYZ. You're still going to pay the same amount, or require some action where I need to go look at their pricing matrix. I love that you made it so easy for them.
It was honestly, it was like the quietest, most loveliest go-to-market I'd ever done. And it's quiet in terms of complaints, right? Or in terms of support tickets.
Yeah. And so it sounds like a lot of that made sense. You did the qual, you did the quant, you saw those very clear patterns. What was the most contentious part of that whole repackaging effort?
The names of the new packages. Because, at the end of the day, everybody's a marketer.
Everyone has an opinion on that, yeah.
And so we all have an opinion.
Oh, that's great. Well, I'm glad it was the names and not something else.
We did, you and I were talking about this a little bit before we started, which is, it's really crucial that you are telling the truth with your teams, right? Mm-hmm. With your own organization. And telling the truth by dumping a bunch of data on somebody will have one effect, but telling the truth by creating the context around it and pointing back to the proof points. We did a ton of testing, right? Mm-hmm. We did so much testing. We tested all sorts of variations for the names. And in the end, the cleanest, most well understood naming was free, personal, and professional in teams, right? And that was it. And even if you don't really love Evernote Personal and you think, I'm going to use Evernote Personal at work, so it doesn't really fit, that's okay. But that was what the majority of people understood. And it made it really easy for us to just sort of show them, I know you don't personally love it, but this is what everybody else thinks.
Really a masterclass in simplifying your message for customers and speaking their language and not overcomplicating things.
That's right. I love to keep things simple, really.
Yeah.